Greetings and welcome to Dance Africana Dance Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Lindsay Gary. Powered by Dance Africana Dance Podcast highlights the African dance tradition from Houston, Texas to the African continent. Its episodes specifically celebrate Black dance artists of the past, present, and future, the history of Black dance in Texas, and African and diasporic dances from around the globe. Our Black Dance in Texas episodes are also a part of a larger oral history project to document the history of Black dance in the region. On today's episode, which I'm really excited for, we'll be discussing and exploring house dance. And our guests today will be sharing their artistic practice and work around that field and that area of Black dance. We're joined by three amazing guests. We have Kyle and Dinita Clark, and we have Angel Anderson. So I want to go ahead and take a moment to introduce these phenomenal people. Kyle JustSole Clark and Dinita Queen Di Clark are both award-winning dancers, choreographers, and street dance competitors who have dedicated over 20 years. Y'all hear that? Over 20 years to the cultivation, transmission, and preservation of hip-hop, street, and club dance forms and cultural traditions. Like, woo! Come on, y'all. They have done this in multiple facets of the culture as professional performers, educators, mentors, and cultural ambassadors. They've toured both nationally and internationally with world-renowned Rennie Harris, Pure Movement Hip Hop Theater Company as principal dancers and rehearsal directors, and have represented the U.S. as cultural ambassadors 3 times via the Obama administration, BAM, Dance Motion USA, the U.S. Embassy, and Next Level USA. Come on, now you put Obama in there. Y'all ain't playing no games. They performed, taught, and competed internationally in over a dozen countries. They've also judged and won national and international street dance competitions, including Freestyle Session, Survival of the Illest, Just Debut. Am I pronouncing that right?
Just Debut.
Excuse me, listen. Just Debut USA, and multiple appearances on House Dance Forever. Okay. Over the past 10 plus years, they've developed multiple entities that have done work across the country. They created JustSole Street Dance Theater Company for performance, Funky Soul Fundamentals for the education, Groove Factory Intensive, the Intensive Soulful for the party, and the Soul Open for the battle. I love how y'all touched all the different elements and created institutions around those. That's phenomenal. Some of their honors include both winning the University of the Arts President's Distinguished Teaching Award. Kyle received it in 2017, Dinita in 2022. Philly Rocky Award, Kyle in 2017, Dinita in 2020, Kyle Pugh Grant in 2017, Dinita got the Pew Fellowship Award in 2019, and 2017, the Leeway Transformation Award. Come on, awards. Y'all are decorated, okay? After teaching at UArts, Temple University, Drexel, and Swarthmore College as adjuncts for 10 years, both Kyle and Dinita have also earned their MFAs from the University of the Arts. And Kyle is a full-time professor at Swarthmore College, and Dinita is a full-time professor at UArts. First of all, let me just give a clap for the bios. We always have these guests, and I'm just like, I'm blown away. Y'all are excellent. I just can't handle it. And then we also are joined by the amazing Angel Anderson, who is a movement artist from the south suburbs of Chicago. Come on, Chicago. She's an alumna of the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, where she obtained her Bachelor of Fine Arts in Dance. Anderson's movement archive includes street and club dance forms, modern and contemporary forms, and traditional dances from West. Come on, Sabar. Traditional dance from West Africa. Her research examines, y'all will learn more about how we're all connected in this. Her research examines the relationship between African diasporic dances inside of the U.S. and traditional West African dances, notably the arc of mutual inspiration, hybridization, and dialogue between these dances. Anderson has completed the first 2 modules of the current African diaspora training hosted at École des Sables in Senegal. Over the course of the 2 modules, she has worked with artists such as Oliver Taparga, Judith Sanchez Ruiz, Alexandra Soutan, and Toyin Sagunro. Alongside performing as a core member in Rennie Harris Pure Movement, she is studying under Rennie Harris University to expand her knowledge on the street and club dance scene. Let's go. I'm excited, clearly.
Yeah.
I'm always excited, but like I'm really excited because I love how you all are connected and I love how we're all connected and how y'all are going to connect the dots on this episode. So I'm super excited to have y'all on. Let's go ahead and jump into the conversation. So first, before we talk about house dancers while we're here, I want to talk a little bit about y'all's background outside of these bios, right? What got you into dance in the first place? And whoever wants to chime in, feel free to do so.
Wow. I guess I'll jump right in here.
Yeah, jump
First,
on
thank you,
in.
thank you so much for having us. We're excited um, to be here today. Entrance into dance. I want to say, of course, we all listen to Michael Jackson. So, seeing him, do the back glide, which he called the moonwalk back then, but seeing him do that back glide across that stage with that glove did a thing, right? And then we're all interested in dance. But I think for myself personally, my entrance came in with tap. I took my first tap classes at 9 years old after seeing Gregory Hines and White Knights and tap. And after that, it was a match. I couldn't see myself doing anything else. And I was so excited. My mother and grandmother were like, "You want to take a tap class?" I'm like, "Absolutely." And I never stopped moving from that point. So that was kind of the entrance into dance, was through tap classes.
For me, in the household, my mother, my grandmother, and my great-grandmother, they've always danced. They've always provided a welcome space for intergenerational exchange in that organic way that we don't really think about when it comes to our families. And then Saturday morning cleanings, Soul Train definitely was a big part and a big inspiration that included artists, of course, like Michael Jackson and a plethora of others, movies like Breaking 1 and Breaking 2, even Dirty Dancing, so growing up in an era where those kind of dancing movies were accessible to me in the household and also with family, finding space to just do that as a natural, everyday, daily occurrence. So I would say that's where my dancing started and the inspiration came from the family.
An Angel?
I would also like to say thank you for having me. Mine is a mixture of both. I was very inspired by Janet Jackson growing up. I remember watching some of her concert footage from Hawaii. I might have been like maybe two to four, and I was doing the choreography with her. And so my aunt was like, "Okay, we obviously need to put her in dance classes." And so that's what she did.
I love when parents cultivate those things and they see those things in their children and they encourage it, they don't shut it down. Like that's powerful. And the thing about the house, no pun intended, but being at home and being surrounded by dancers. And I think I always used to say, well, let me not say always, but at one point in my life, when people would ask me, when did you first start dancing? I would immediately go to my studio experience. And I was like, at some point I had a like kind of a turning point. I'm like, wait a minute. Like I was choreographing before I was going to a studio. I was, and making up dances with my sister in the front yard, with our neighbors. We were all, we put on the radio, we were going. So even improvisation, right? That's something we grew up doing, music, being around our communities and our homes. So I appreciate that y'all are highlighting that because it's not ironic, right? Especially when we talk about house dance, right? Like those things being connected to something that's really close to us. And so I want to shift over to where you were introduced to house dance or how house dance became a part of your practice. And so let's start with Angel with this one.
All right. So I was always listening to house music growing up because I'm from Chicago. And so my aunt was a complete house and club head. So I knew a lot about the music. I continued listening to it up into my adult age. And I ended up going to the University of Illinois. And that's where I studied dance. And I met a grad student. His name is Denzel Thompson Stout. And it's funny because he's their student or was one of their students. So yeah, I studied that with him for about 3-ish years and then decided that it was something I wanted to keep doing. It was something that I fell in love with. I was reconnecting to my childhood. I was reconnecting to my lineage with my aunt. And Yeah, I found an opportunity to dance with Rennie and meet him and just connect to more of the street dance pioneers, and that's how I got here.
Wow.
Why am I not? Why did I forget you were from Chicago? I know you from Chicago, but I never even connected the dots. Like, oh, she's doing house dance. She's from Chicago. Look, see. And what about y'all too? Dinita and Kyle Clark.
Well, it's a party, a Philadelphia staple. This is 20, this is this 20th year.
Yeah.
Right. So I was 19 and I was a freshman in college. And actually, did I go before meeting Marcel? I'm not sure. I think I heard about the Sunday party, which is an all age house party ran by Lee Jones and DJ Dirty, Frank Colazzo. And yeah, we met one of our professors, Marcel Durden, and he taught us locking for a course. And fortunately, I was able to take it for one semester, but because of other courses that I had to take that was required, I only was able to take his class once. But within that time when we took his class, we kind of saw him like house dancing on the side, but he didn't teach it whatsoever. And so after hearing about the house party, and he's just like, no, well, I don't teach that, kind of come to the house party, like, with him. And so we did. And from that point forward, we kind of like clubbed 4 nights a week. There were 4 different, there were a lot of clubs, but we frequented 4 nights a week, which we're very fortunate to have had that opportunity because every city is not like that. So it's a thriving house community here, especially to run in it at such a young age. And then later on, maybe the following year, no, actually later on that same year, 2002, we met some of the pioneers that taught at Elizabeth Legends. Yeah, and I don't want to take up too much space.
No, I mean you just about nailed it all. Like yeah, that was my experience running into Marcel Durden, who now is the he's a full-time professor at USC, chairing the very first hip hop dance major at a college. He's been doing that since 15. And so with him inviting us to the club, like you said, we didn't have a direct teacher. He was like, look, I don't teach that, but I can take you to the club. And that was instrumental. So that led to direct embodiment. And it was our way of releasing the frustrations of having to, know that ballet and modern was the only way that we could achieve success in dance in the world. And so we embraced it as a catharsis and later on turned it into, our practice for life.
That's y'all are saying so many amazing. First of all, I'm a little jealous that we didn't, I wasn't exposed to it at all. I think I probably first heard about house dance maybe in college, like just in passing. So I went my whole life never really hearing of it. And then when Afro beats started getting popular, I started hearing about Afro house, but I didn't know about this whole long history that occurred before that. So, I started doing research and that's how I started learning more. And then I think really started seeing it once I was aware that it was there, right? Because now I know what I'm looking for. So perhaps it was around, but it wasn't as apparent as, maybe in Chicago or Philly and other parts of the country, maybe even in Baltimore. And so I wish I would have had that, but I'm glad y'all are here to kind of talk about how y'all were raised around this and how you had that as an outlet. I wish I would have had a professor. I studied dance at University of Houston, and I wish I would have had a professor be like, come on, I'm gonna take you to the house party.
Listen,
like, literally.
It was just as shocking to us as it is to you.
Right,
like, yeah, you want to take us to the club? Sure. Like, you're like,
but that's a part of the experience. Like that.
Right.
Absolutely.
It's not just the club. It's like, this is where culture lives,
Absolutely.
Right.
And, it's ironic you say that because in Baltimore was a huge hub for house. In the beginning, Louis Vega had a residency in Baltimore at the Palladium. I missed that entire era because, growing up in the mid 90s, gayness was still, a taboo topic that, folks in Black communities didn't like to talk about. So, the teenagers are just like, hey, club nights is Friday night at the Paradox and Sunday night at Hammerjacks. You're not caught downtown on Saturday night. Don't you dare go down there. We know what you are. I'm like, what you mean? What is what I am if I go on Saturday night?
Right.
And I ain't want to find out because all my boys was like, no, we don't do that. So I'm like, okay. So I missed the whole golden era of house. So it was ironic to run into it in Philly after it began to die down in Baltimore.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, and I want to talk a little bit about these hubs because I think I came across somebody through Dance Africana who reached out to us at one point about Baltimore House, and I was like, okay, so then how is that different than Chicago House, and how is that different than house maybe done in Philly or other places? But before we get into like those different regions, what is house dance? Where does it come from? Who were its earliest influences? We know that it has to do with music, community, right? Like all of our dance traditions, but kind of tell us a little bit more about the history.
Wow. What is house dance? It's a continuum. We all know every generation or so, Blackness takes a new formation in dance.
Right.
It's been going on since the dawn of time. But house in particular, as we know it today, started out in 77. That's where we mark when Club Warehouse was opened in downtown Chicago, by DJ Frankie Knuckles. He was asked to be a resident DJ there, but he's from New York, right? But he was brought down there to open this club, and it became so wildly popular. And what he did differently was he was mixing, R&B and funk with Afro drum and bass and electro sounds. And it was a different sound that no one had heard before, which brought A-listers from around the world to this club. And once the club shut down in 83, most of the music and the dance movement from that point went to New York, of course, the largest import city in America at that time. And so once that kind of shifted, but inside of that vacuum were multiple cultures at one time, right? So you have African, you got Latin, you got tap, you got, hip hop met it in that mid to late 80s space. But prior to that, it existed before hip hop met it. But once it did, in that mid to late 80s, clubs like The Loft and Paradise Garage, which were very exclusive clubs, but also LGBTQ clubs, they hip hoppers came into that space, and the catalyst for that moment was Marjorie Smart. She passed away in 2015, I believe.
I believe so.
From breast cancer. She was only 46 years old. And she encouraged all of her hip hop friends to go to the club with her, to Paradise Garage and The Loft, because hip hop clubs were being deemed as dangerous. Because as gangster rap came to the forefront, now clubs are being shut down via an old cabaret law, which basically stated that dance in a bar setting cannot happen. So they used that to shut down hip hop clubs in New York. And so with hip hoppers having nowhere to go, they went to the house club, and that's how the explosion happened, where hip hop meets house. And then that's where they join, and then it gets pioneered around the world by a group called Mop Top, who then broke into two groups, Elite Force and Dance Fusion. And Dance Fusion was responsible for house, and Elite Force was for hip hop. So that's kind of sort of how it was, the dance was conceived and then pioneered around the world.
Come on with the history. That's powerful. So, and I was going to ask you a question about the differences between hip hop and house. So obviously there's an overlap, right? But how would someone distinguish those movements, especially given the fact that there is an overlap? How would they distinguish those movements and even those sounds, if possible? If possible.
I mean,
yes and no, right?
Like, yes. Well, I mean, it starts with music. Music is the action, dance is the reaction. So when music changes, dance changes, right? So with the music changing, so the difference is, of course, naturally, hip hop is in between 70 to 90 beats a minute. House is between 120 and as high as 160 in Chicago, right? So the music then tells you how to organize the dance. You have to organize it differently based on the speed. House has more of a transitory, beat. Boom. It's just knocking on your soul. You know what I'm saying? Hip hop is boom, gat, that Dre, the bass and the snare, boom, bat, that, boom, bat, which creates a different movement pattern. So hip hop is more on the boom bat, and house is on that bass, but then you hit other things that come alongside the way, right? But house has a specific je ne sais quoi, and hip hop has a specific je ne sais quoi. I think their ability to mesh is based off of their roots, right? Which is African, right? You were mentioning that, and how we connected to that is hip hop. Well, with house, you have multiple cultures that are informing the dance. With hip hop, it's blackness and brownness in whole, in part, for hip hop, breaking being the first official form. And then when you get into the social dances, they were all done in black and brown neighborhoods. So hip hop is more, I want to say, from the root of black culture within, I wanted to, for lack of a better words, projects, right? Spaces where blackness was contained, right? It's coming from that. And house was coming more so from LGBTQ spaces where any and everyone was accepted, but that was the only place people could be accepted, right? For the lifestyle that they were living. So that kind of what differentiates the dance forms was how they were, spread about, or how they came to be, more or less, right? Yeah. And then, so the music is the key to that answer when it comes to the dance.
In-house is a club dance.
It's a club dance. Hip hop was done.
Hip hop's done socially, block parties, weddings.
Street.
Yeah.
And that's where street dance comes from, because most of those folks didn't have studios, right? They'd be outside with their boys, back spinning on cardboard, or looking as Loose Joint, who, I just had down here. One of the folks from Mob Top was basically saying, like, yeah, I used to practice in the windows in front of Macy's, just trying to figure out how my stuff looked.
Or your own reflection from a car outside on your block.
And I mean, wow, I'm laughing because I think all dancers have been there at some point. I don't know.
Yes. When you're creating with your friends.
Yeah, right. But I just did it the other day. I had a performance that was outdoors at a park. And I'm like, we didn't have a mirror or anything to rehearse in, but I'm like looking at the reflection in this glass. I'm like, ooh, am I doing, or did we do the right stuff? So I'm laughing because it's something I've been doing, but it's like something very recent. And then also going back to this, this influence of the LGBTQ plus, did y'all want to add on maybe Dinita or Angel, anything else about that influence and why it's so important to mention that or to highlight that?
Yeah, I think that citing inspirations and the people you're around and what you carry with you, especially as an educator, is very important to include the people in the spaces that influenced you. So I think that's critical in this thing of preserving and disseminating all the information that you have, because we are more than one. We don't arrive by ourselves. We carry our experiences, our shared experiences intergenerationally with others. And it's important to cite them, as we carry this thing forward. So yes, it's pivotal to, mention.
And it's, okay. So, and as far as, I wanted to circle back because I almost forgot about the club scene. What makes the club dance different than the street dance minus the actual location? Because couldn't technically a club dance be done in the street and vice versa?
Absolutely. You could do the technique and the foundation anywhere, but the feeling that the club provides is like none other. The bass from the speakers, the atmosphere that the DJ creates, if they're really paying attention to the crowd, the different people, the person two-stepping with their drink in the hand, the elderly person that's like dancing for 4 hours and looking like they don't have any stamina issues. And because the first time I went to a club in New York, 65-year-old man battled me. He gave me 6 rounds. pounds. And I was like, I don't think I'm gonna make it like right now, all with the smile on his face. So those things are priceless. He wasn't doing the most technical moves, but his spirit was very loud, and it definitely like pushed me in a way, being a young dancer, thinking that it's all about these certain moves or vocabulary words, and which we refer to in the Clark method as the foundation or technique of certain just foundational moves or whatever. So we call those words because we use that to speak for ourselves. But, just having those different interactions and exchanges with different people of different age ranges or races and experience levels. But for us personally, experiencing something we call the blackout space is something you can't predict. It's like everything it has to be the right music, the right exchange, the right song. And before you know it, you're freestyling for 3 minutes. And then when you're done, someone's like, oh my God, that was amazing. You know what you just did? Like, no, I didn't. And I love the fact that I don't know what got me there, but those are the moments that we chase and experience within the club. And I think that when you do it outside of the club, I'm not saying it could be less fulfilling, but it's a rare occurrence to get into the blackout space in a different space.
Right.
A different location.
Right.
Yeah.
And plus, being in the club, like she was saying with the speaker systems, feeling music is super important. So frequency, as we were talking about, in grad school together, right? We were talking about frequency and what that means, and having that frequency hitting your body consistently in a specific way lends to a different movement palette. And when you're out, when we talk about street dance, we're talking more so about hip hop, and in its inception was breaking, and breaking was done outside, right? And the music was adjusted for the dancer. In the club, the dancer's adjusting to the music.
Right.
Does that make sense? So outside, you had Cool Herc going 50-50. Wait, they only dancing to the break. Wait, all right, I'll play the break over here. We just gonna keep playing the break to see these guys keep doing this thing over and over. We're gonna call it the merry-go-round. Right. So that's kind of sort of that difference between street dance and club dances. Club, you're walking in and you're knowing, what you're getting into, right? With hip hop outside in the street, it could literally go from anything. You could go from James Brown to Barry White. You know what I'm saying? Like that can happen like this. And those are two totally different feelings. You see what I'm saying?
Right. Thank y'all. And Angel, did you have anything you wanted to add? I saw you nodding.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I've had a lot less experience going to the club just because club culture is a bit hard to access right now, especially depending on where you live at. I live in Columbus, Ohio currently, so I work with what I have, So I definitely agree on that experience of like entering that blackout space. It's something that feels very, very spiritual and that you can't control. It's something that kind of just comes over you. And that's what I think.
It's giving trance, it's giving ring shout, it's giving
absolutely
so much of, and that's why I think Black dance is so just beyond powerful. Like when you said this blackout space, this this gave me chills, because it's like, it's something that you don't have the words for, really.
Right.
And the fact that y'all gave it a name, or that you have a name for it, I'm glad, because it's something that's very, very difficult to articulate. It's just something you have to know that you've experienced. And those who know, they know, right? They just know. Absolutely. They just know who and what it is. And I said who as well, because who is there in the space with you, seen and unseen, right? Right. And so I'm also wondering about locations again, in terms of, like I said, I'm sad I didn't get that experience here in Houston, because the way I grew up, right, the kind of clubs that I had access to when I got to at least be in high school, we had the little teen clubs. The music tradition is very different around here. So it's very, Southern. I mean, for lack of a better term, it's very Southern. You have Houston being home to like Chopping and Screw, but you also have all the what UGK they call the Southern rap tunes. It's a different kind of feeling. But then my people being from Louisiana, you also have this kind of opposite end of like Zydeco music, which is like where my family's from in Louisiana, which has a different kind of pace than what you're gonna find in Houston. Completely different type of pace. And when you were talking about the beats, it made me think of that. And then going all the way down in New Orleans, you have bounce and things of that nature, which is in second line, which is a very different pace. And that kind of made me think about this kind of feeling you may have with a house dance, but again in a different space, right? A lot of our dances are done at home or are done outside for that, trail rides to the streets, however it may land. But it's just so powerful to think about the different rhythms that come with that. And I wanted to ask you, based off the whole location piece, why do you think certain locales house dance is more popular? And even music, like I said, I know I recently heard about Baltimore, but then also Philly and then the scene, and of course in Chicago. Why do you think that there are certain areas, New York, of course, that house dance has taken more, has made a larger presence in? And what other locations are there besides those that you mentioned?
Well, one, the size of your metropolis and the population that's within your metropolis, right? So if you have a very culturally dense space, those seem to be more where, house is acceptable, because there are more than one kind of ear in that space that lends to folks wanting to have spaces where this music is played. Mm-hmm. So that's the first big thing. And I mean, house was really, really, after Chicago, when it came to the Northeast, it really became a Northeast thing until those pioneers took it around the globe. And now we would hope to think that, there are major hubs of house dance in America, but the major hubs are in France, are in Amsterdam, are in Japan, are in China, right? And Brazil, oh God, Brazil, yeah. Right? So those are the major hubs for house dance now, where people from all around the world are connecting to those spaces just to get house, yeah. Which is so ironic that it was born here in America, but you got to go to Amsterdam or you got to go to France to, get the feeling that it once had at home. You know what I'm saying? It's strange, but that's kind of sort of where those hubs are. And I think it bridges people without language, without verbal language, right? The physical language is easier for folks to connect to with house because of that consistent, that's a heartbeat. If you can't connect to that, you're not alive, even if you just do a head bob. Like, right. Some folks say, we had two-steppers too, and the two-steppers, all they do is this, and we feel that. And thank you for being at the party tonight. Your presence matters too. You know what I'm saying? Like the two-stepper, man, you gotta love that. The party don't feel like the party without two-steppers.
And it's so funny that you say this. Me not being like in the immediate look, I'm trying to be in y'all community look, but me not being a part of that immediate house dance community. I was in Paris on my way over to Senegal a few weeks ago, and I was there in September, October. Anyway, so on my way, I stopped in Little Africa, which is this area of Paris where people from all over Africa live, from all over the Caribbean are now living in Paris. So I met people literally within. My layover was 8 hours. So I probably was in this area for 6 hours. And it was just, I was like, next time I go to Paris, because usually when I'm on a flight, I'm trying to go to Africa. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, if I'm gonna go to Europe, I'm gonna try to connect with our people, because I've been to Paris before, but I did the Eiffel Tower, thing. Right. I'm like, okay, I'm trying to do that this time. So anyway, I was there, I think maybe maximum 6 hours. And I met people, not just one person, I met people from Central African Republic, Madagascar, Mauritius, Guadeloupe, Mali, Democratic Republic of Congo, Haiti. I mean, within just this brief time, it was just this hub And I remember it's a place called Little Africa Village. If y'all get a chance, check it out. No, they're not sponsoring this episode. I didn't want to mention it because it's amazing. But look, maybe they should. I'm kidding. But it was just that amazing. And I walked in, and the lady who worked there, she's from Guadeloupe, and she had previously lived in Canada, all these different things. Anyway, she was like, "Oh, you from Houston?" I was like, "Yeah." And I was like, because usually people don't necessarily know about Houston abroad, or they know about Texas maybe. And so I was like, "Yeah, she's like, there's this amazing house dance festival there," and I was like, because I didn't even know. And she was like, "Yeah, I'm a house dancer," and I was like, "Really?" I was like, "I've been trying to connect more with that." Angel, you still owe me a house dance class. Okay, anyway, that's a
I
side
do.
note. We're in Senegal. I was like, "Girl, we gotta do a house dance. We gotta do it." We never, it was just so busy. But anyway, so she said that to me, and I literally started following this page, and didn't even know it existed, and it has been around apparently for some time. But it's just funny that you mentioned Paris being this hub, and then I walk in and she's like, "Oh, yeah, this is what I'm doing." And this is my, well, let me not say that on camera, but she's like, "This is what I'm doing." And yeah, I would love to go to Houston to go to this festival. And I was like, yeah. So anyway, needless to say, you're right. It all makes sense. So I want to shift gears a little bit to talk more about y'all's individual. Oh, go ahead, Angel. You gonna
Okay.
apologize to me for that?
All good. I have, I think, three different things that popped inside of my head when we were talking about these different hubs. So one being that movement is a language, and there are so many different dialects or manifestations of a thing. The thing, or our dialect, just so happens to be house. And because the pioneers did take these dances overseas, when we occupy spaces maybe overseas, we get to interact with these people and just find that common language. And it's really special, really. And I think this happened to me for the first time when I was in Senegal and I was at the All for House battle. And it was so strange because everybody was speaking French. I speak English, and but we could still understand each other.
I don't speak French.
I don't speak French.
I don't speak French.
I made a piece called "I Don't Speak French," and that's why I'm messing with her, because I made a piece called that because it was it was a lot.
No.
Go
It's
ahead,
cool.
though. Go ahead, Angel. I want you to finish. Sorry.
But yeah, even in receiving direction, they were speaking in French, and I'd have to be like, oh, I speak English. But sometimes it was just a matter of having to pick up on how people were moving and noticing these different nuances or common threads that people were engaging in. And then two, this past summer when I was in Senegal, we were engaging in Iberian coast dances. And so there are two social dances that we were learning, and it was Zawali and Zigli BT. And Saki, who is our instructor for the course, was talking about how they use house as inspiration for the social dance. So everything is intertwining with everything. Everything is inspiring everything. I was reading this article that included the arc of circle. Hold on, pause. The arch of mutual inspiration. There we go. And they were talking about how dances from the States or from wherever, they always are constantly inspiring one another. So I just wanted to hit on that.
And that exchange is so, I mean, that's what I live. That is my whole life, goal, is to connect us in that way, because it's amazing. And I actually, a lot of this conversation, can y'all hear me okay still? Okay. A lot of this conversation came up with when I started engaging in Afrobeat dance. And this was before it was really popular. So this is before Wizkid was, people just knew him, a household name in America. It's when he was, very early on. Houston, if y'all don't know, Houston, I think we have the largest Nigerian population outside of Nigeria. So yeah, so I grew up around Nigerians. So all these Nollywood on Netflix, we were watching it on the DVDs and on the VHS when I was a kid, because I grew up very close with a lot of Nigerians. And my dad, his best friend from college was also Nigerian. So it's I grew up in that being very aware of that environment. And I remember, we started doing a lot of actually Dance Africana when I first started the company. We were background dancers for Afrobeats artists. That's like what we did. And I needed a way to protect our money, essentially, and protect us as artists. So I created a structure to do that. But that was the first thing we did was that's what we were known for, Afrobeats background dancing and choreographing for Afrobeats artists and things like that. So anyway, I've been in conversation with this for some years now. And I remember that's when I started thinking about this exchange, because I remember encountering people who would say, particularly Nigerian people who would say, oh, this is Nigerian music. And I was like, yes and no, right? Because this is hip hop. This is heavily influenced by hip hop. And then, you start doing the research and you start realizing Afrobeats comes from Afro beats without the S. And Fela Kuti being one of those major, influences. And, again, what you were saying before, Kyle, about the music leading to the dance and that kind of thing. And so, Afrobeat being that precursor to Afrobeats. And then you look at Afrobeat and how that was influenced by jazz and funk from Black Americans. So then it's like, well, I'm like, okay, so yes, it's a Nigerian manifestation of a global Pan-African or Black musical tradition. Because I'm like, you can't discount these early influences in this hip hop, this rap that's taking place over a beat. And it's powerful that those musical styles can have that exchange, like how you have Congolese rumba, and with house, and then all these different things. And that's powerful for us if we use it in the right way. And if we keep some of these, if we keep the names alive, or if the precursors, if you will, if we give note to that. So I think sometimes we can tend to discount earlier influences and say, oh, this is one thing. And it's like, no, like, let's not forget. And so with that, I want us to you can just popcorn out, if you will, just who are some people's names we should remember when it comes to house music, when it comes to house dance, like just some people that may have influenced you, that have pioneered, that have revolutionized, that have maintained this area. Just shout them out.
Wow. Of course, DJ Frankie Knuckles, Larry Levan, Carrie Chandler. Oh my God, there's so many, like
Osunlade, Rich Medina.
Jeez. These are all DJs, by the way.
Charisma
out of Baltimore.
Lee Jones,
Philly.
Frank Colazzo.
Yeah.
Nico. DJ Nico. DJ Spinner. DJ Calvin Bailey.
Black Coffee. Right, people that are bringing it to the forefront. These are DJs of folks. David Mancuso, right, for holding, the loft and things like that. Like, there's so many names. Okay, of course you have, like I said before, Marjorie Smart.
Yes.
Dance Fusion. Those are the folks that took it around the world. That's Khalif Sellers.
Tony McGregor.
Ejo Wilson, Brian Green,
Shannon
Selby, and Shannon Mabra. You also have Sekou Haru. When it comes to Europe, right? When we're talking about Paris being that big hub, you have the Serial Steppers and One Tip Posse that started in 1992 or 3-ish. And so that's Ukes and Babson, who started off a house, who passed away in the pandemic. Mamson, Capella. You go to Japan, you have Hiro-san, Tatsuo, Pino. There's so many people around the world that are responsible for keeping it alive. It's too hard to name every person. And anybody watching, if we forgot your name, it is not intentful. We're being asked in real time. But nonetheless, those are some of the, like, those major names of folks that we've met through our generation that are above us, right? That have set the bar, right? Cricket, Kansas
Yeah,
cricket. Like,
cricket.
there's still so many names, right? There's so many that are
Kim
popular.
Holmes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and
The generation in USA. Yourself, myself, Toyin, Tasha, Sam,
Nene.
Nemesis, Junius, yeah.
Junius Brickhouse from DC.
and who did you say, Angel?
Nubia Nene.
Oh,
Absolutely.
yeah.
And they're within our generation. Of course, Rennie was in that generation, in that class of first house movers, you know what I'm saying, coming out of Philly. Shakan.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, Shakan Casey.
Marcel, as you said.
And of course. They're
Fabian. Oh my God, we'll be here forever.
No, this is good. The reason why I asked that is because it's not about it being an exhaustive list, because I think, Kyle, you said something earlier about what was the word you used? When I asked you about what house dance is, you said it's a continuum, right?
Right.
So this is not to say
that they're the end all be all got it. These are the folks that are in the line of lines, and whoever inspired them, right? They'll have their time to
whoever's to come, the names we don't know yet. And I think y'all are important, all three of you, and that's why you're here, because you're also doing that work at different stages, to not only keep it alive, but to engage with it and to be honest about it. I mean, to see Angel when I was in Senegal teaching house, given that history as a young person, like explaining that history to our brothers and sisters from the continent of various places, and to have that broken down, because sometimes people may know the movement, they may not know the history, or they may not know some of the things that were happening before they got introduced to it. And then to see you all at University of the Arts, doing a whole, research is action performance with the basketball.
Yeah.
I mean, what? Like, to see that being taught at the university level, I know, we still have a lot more work to do in making sure that our dances all around are treated equally in academia, right? We have a lot more work to do, but to see that, and to see that that was being respected in that situation, like, that's powerful. So I was like, look, when we getting down,
right.
Look, I'm gonna sign up for an intensive with y'all, okay? But no, but I'm serious. Y'all know when I say stuff, I don't just be playing. I'm laughing, but I'm serious.
No. Jokes are 50% true. I know that. For sure.
Right? I like that. So I appreciate what y'all are doing. And I want to talk, as we begin to wrap up a little bit, I want to talk about just where do you feel, what kind of a little bit more about your practice with house dance. So I know we covered a little bit with your bio, Kyle and Dinita. I'm gonna go to Angel first and just talk about how does that inspire you? Because I know that y'all are all engaged in other forms. I remember watching Dinita do improvisation, with house, and baby, she bust. I said, come on, John. She bust out with some I can't remember which West African dance step it was, but I'm just like, oh, that's how we do it. And I thought that was so rich, and I think that's what makes house dance so rich, right? The different influences, and listening to Kyle talk about how you started with tap dance, and Angel seeing you do Mafundala, you know what I mean? So, like, talk about how these things are intertwined with your other practices, or just what you're doing, how house dance fits into that, just in a summary. So we'll start with Angel. Come on, Miss Anderson.
This is such a good question. I think it's important to note that at university, I was studying primarily like modern and contemporary and things of that nature. And I think what's so beautiful about street and club dance culture, just African diasporic dances, is the fact that it is constantly evolving. And so it's not something that exists outside of these Eurocentric forms. It's something that can come inside of it and evolve it and make it into something that is completely other, you know? So I make it a point to always honor these different parts of myself rather than separate them, because that's what they want us to do in a way. And so yeah, in my freestyle, you'll see mafundala, you'll see house, you'll see some aspects of hip hop, maybe whacking. Like, it's never just one thing or the other. It's both and I try to also facilitate that and encourage that when I'm teaching. You don't have to leave different parts of yourself behind.
Absolutely.
And you don't have to segment, right? You don't have to segment. I think that that's so powerful. And what did you say is the both and? Who does that sound like, y'all?
Yeah. Yes.
Y'all, that's
Don't tell me the friends.
Thomas
Yeah.
the Friends. Because
Thomas
he
the
was
friends.
the both and. I'm gonna have to send him this episode. But anyway, go ahead, y'all. So tell us, and I don't know if y'all want to talk collectively or individually, but I would love to hear. So I think Dinita, were you about to say something? Do you remember the question?
Yeah, I guess kind of like this crossover of like all of our backgrounds or the various backgrounds that we have within dancing. To piggyback what Angel said, yeah, like bringing all parts of your training, all parts of your experiences, inside of the classroom, in the club, within different forms, and just honoring yourself and your experiences, knowing that is valuable, and to use it, for your benefit, not only for the aesthetic purposes to get a job or to jump on stage. That could be a part of it, but that's not all of who we are. So, going back to, my childhood, when my mom would like wave in the house while she's cooking, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, if a wave comes out through my house movement, then you're going to see it because it's a part of me. If you're going to see a fan kick somewhere, jump up into a half split, I don't know. It's all going to come out because if the music inspires that, then I'm going to allow myself to follow through. And I think that's, important to, when you separate certain things, you do it for your understanding of the forms so that you can say, I understand this. But then when you're out of the classroom in a club space, you're using all of your tools. That's what we like to refer to it as. Like, how am I using the tools I have that I've acquired throughout all of my experiences, to speak for myself and to say how I feel in a moment. And that requires vulnerability, honesty, and acceptance, right? And allowing yourself to just be. Yeah.
So you gonna leave with life lessons?
I mean,
see, that's what you gotta do.
It's dance is life and life is dance, and that's what we believe in. Trying to receive our higher self, our most spiritual self. To elevate and to edify and to fortify, like to just let it all hang out. Chasing that blackout space, and you have to be content with where you are in a moment and let it be what it's going to be.
Yeah. The overlap. Yeah. And see, that's the thing about house dance in particular. When it comes to the club, you come as you are, right? It's just like it's church, right?
Right.
For some people, and when you come in, you're coming in with different backgrounds, different origins, different movement profiles, or should I say physical languages, right? And just because you enter a new space that has a different language doesn't mean you 100% abandon yours, or better yet, that doesn't mean your dialect is going to disappear. Right. You still have that lens to your individuation, but also knowing that you are speaking another language, because some, oh Lord, I'm about to jump into one, but I'm gonna jump in. Folks, some folks are are really about pressing boundaries and fusing everything, which is fantastic because evolution is necessary, but it kind of dilutes what the thing is if the rules of said thing aren't stuck to. So foundation is super, 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 super important. And yes, it is okay to throw in a whacking arm. Yes, it's okay to do, a piece of top rock. It's okay to do those things as long as it makes sense in the construct of your sentence. Does that make sense? You just can't blurt it out because you got it in your bag. Like, we all got tools. If a plumber is sitting at a sink and he only needs a wrench, he's not going to pull out a hammer and a screwdriver. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
He's not going to do that. He's going to use the tool that's necessary for that moment. You know what I'm saying? And some folks just like laying their tool belt on the floor because they have one, which is nice. And people expect you to respect that because you've laid a whole tool belt down. No, we see that you're prepared. That's nice. But do you have the tool and the knowledge how to use that tool for this moment? Right? That's what really defines you, not how many tools you actually have. Because musicality is a sensitivity to music, not the ability to hit a beat. Right. So once you understand, tone, color, tone, pressure, all of those things, right? All of those things speak to your IQ, right? And your understanding of the culture, the music, and the dance. So, but fusion is definitely necessary. I think the saying, to put it in layman's terms, is you learn the rules, then you break them. And a lot of folks don't take the time to learn the rules. They just jump right into breaking it. And I'm like, you got to learn what the rules are first before you can change them, right? Just like you got to learn English before you can start speaking the slang. You got to understand what it means in English before you understand what it means in the hood, right? So that's kind of sort of the thing. But fusion is definitely a good thing, right? We do it all the time. But it lends to your individuation, and without it, you're just repeating what's been done before, right? But I actually just want to take a second, jump off that and jump back to what you were saying about Afro beats. Is super dope. Because it proves that mitochondrial thing, right? It's mitochondrial going from, because I spent some time in Nigeria, for about a month and a half. I spent in Nigeria and running into Afro beats and running into those dances. It was like, this is eerily reminiscent, like the dances like the Campo Jamu, right? Which is like this pull and you drop with the head drop. Yeah, right. I'm sitting there like, okay, well, what does that mean? Right? What does that mean? He's like, well, at night, sometimes the electricity doesn't work. So when you pull the generator and it works, you're like, yes. And I'm like, exactly, right? Just like the prep is, making fun of preppy kids or preparing yourself to look in the mirror, right, for a party, right? All of these things, right, speak to our culture and what you do in the culture, right? So I think that's how we connect hip hop and African, is that these social dances are derived from our actual daily life experiences. That's what creates the dances. So if you're not a part of that culture, you're not going to understand what the dance is. And just because I can say the term tendu doesn't mean I know French, right? It just means that I know that word for that thing. Does that make sense? So it's a very delicate balance, but if you respect culture, you'll take the time to really, really learn how to speak that language and then add yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Not the
head bob.
Yeah.
Look, I'm like, anybody else want to add as we wrap up? No, but seriously, you said so many good things, all three of y'all, and I'm just like, I'm gonna leave it there. I'm not gonna add any 2 cents. That's just it. And there it is, and that's something else. So, were there any final thoughts? We're gonna talk a little bit about how people can connect with y'all in a second, but are there any final things you want to say? I'm not sure there's anything else left to say in this moment, right? But if there is, I want to give space for that. Hold space for that.
Absolutely. House dancing is a lifestyle. House culture is a lifestyle. Folks lived and died, repping this, and were ostracized, tarred and feathered for being in this lifestyle. It's one that we don't take lightly. And so a big part of, I think I want to talk, leaning back to Brenda Dixon Gottschalk, appropriation, approximation, assimilation. What does it mean to bring folks, or for folks to come into the assimilation of a culture as opposed to approximate or appropriate, which means actually being a part of said culture, right? What does it mean to go to the club every week for a year and see what happens, right? What does it mean to stay in that thing, right? That vacuum, so that we fully understand the weight or the shoulders of people that we stand on. Is super, super, super important. For folks to know that when you get into house dance, yes, that it's fun. Yes, it's freeing. But freedom requires a release or a submission or a sacrifice of some kind, right? Because that's what a relationship is, right? It's a sacrifice to some degree. And as long as you're willing to, sacrifice the ego, the culture, then can meet you where you are, right? And it's a tough thing to do because we're taught to protect ourselves at all times, right? Like protect yourself, protect yourself, protect yourself, right? But what does it mean to open up? Because love and hate come through the same gate. So you can't receive the love without receiving the hate too. You know what I mean? So know that comes as a part of the package when you walk into any culture, right? Some people going to love you, some people going to hate you, but house is all about the love, man. It is really about sharing and connecting with folks, and to share your experience or give your testimony about what's happened in your life to this music in real time, right? Regardless of whether you black out or not, the point is to just speak honestly, and honestly means speaking truth. That has your truth, right? It doesn't mean speaking somebody else's truth, just your own. And the culture will push you forward as it should.
In real time. Dinita, Angel, any final thoughts? Yeah, like we said it all. And that's that, like you said, it's crazy. Like it's literally what you said earlier, Dinita. Like you leave it all there in that moment, right? Like that's it, So I mean, I want to thank you all. Y'all are phenomenal. I'm inspired by each one of you, and I'm so glad that you were able to share just all the knowledge, your experiences with us, and for us to learn more about house dance, or to be able to celebrate it for those of us who are already familiar with the form, because I think that's a part of it, is celebrating, naming, and honoring our traditions. So I want us to take a moment to share any events or activities that you have coming up. Another way for people to connect with you outside of events such as social media, websites, anything you'd like to share. We can start with Dinita for us, please. And I guess for both of you, or however y'all want to do that. Dinita's like, yeah, me. Come on,
so you can find me on IG at Queen_DINITA. You can find Kyle
at JustSole, at JustSole. Our entity, JustSole Street Dance Theater, you can find them at JustSole SDT for Street Dance Theater, and at Funky Soul Fundamentals, which is our educational entity. Soul is SOLE as well, so Funky Soul Fundamentals, you can find it there.
And our website.
And our website is
Come on, website.
Right. So those are all of the ways in which you can reach us. Feel free to DM about anything and everything, just as Dr. Lindsay Gary has done. Right. So if you feel like reaching out, you know where to find us.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Y'all please connect. And Angel, how can they connect with you?
They can connect with me via IG as well. My name is ang.d.anderson.
Come on, Angie. And do y'all have anything coming up? I know Angel was on tour recently. So are there any events that y'all have coming up? Because this episode will air pretty soon. So anything that y'all have coming up before the end of the year that anybody can check y'all out at?
Absolutely. We literally just finished a month of programming at Swarthmore. We did a Hip Hop is 50 celebration, but nonetheless, coming up at the end of this year, we'll be doing a lot of things, a lot of workshops and some other things that are going forward, things that we can't really throw out there at the moment, but nonetheless, just stay tuned to our Instagram pages, because we got a lot going on.
Indeed.
Yes. And Angel?
Just see what Rennie Harris Pure Movement is doing, and I'll be there.
Yes, and shout out to Rennie Harris, right?
Yes.
Somebody that came up
Lorenzo
frequently.
Harris. Yes.
Yes.
Sorry, Dr. Lorenzo Harris.
Doctor.
Yeah, he got 2 honoraries.
You got to say it like that, though. It has to come from that particular place. Not doctor and doctor. It's 2 different things. Well, thank y'all so much. Be sure to connect with Dance Africana Dance Podcast. Our website is danceafricana with a K.com. And again, danceafricana.com. Our Instagram is danceafricana. And to my Africana people, don't forget to dance.